Last Halloween, the night I was Wednesday, I knew the moment I woke up that it was going to be a night of remarkable chaos, or at least chaos by suburban standards. Last Halloween, I decided for reasons that make perfect sense only in hindsight to become Wednesday Addams, not for a costume contest, not for Instagram likes. I did it for the pure, unadulterated thrill of being someone utterly deadpan. I stood in front of my mirror for what felt like an eternity, adjusting my braids with surgical precision. My best friend, Clara, sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, tossing candy wrappers at me and muttering something about how I had lost my mind. "You are really doing this again?" she asked, eyes wide, suspicious but also resigned. She knew better than to argue. "Yes," I said, voice deliberately monotone. The world deserves my interpretation of despair, and Halloween is the perfect medium. Clara sighed. She had been my partner in mischief for as long as I could remember. Last year, she watched me stalk the neighborhood as a miniature embodiment of death itself, and survived only because I spared her, mostly. By the time we left my house, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. The neighborhood was already alive with the glow of carved pumpkins, kids darting between houses, parents supervising from lawn chairs, and the faint smell of candy and damp leaves. "Stick close," I instructed Clara, stepping out in my black dress, combat boots, and braids tight enough to be considered a minor threat. "We are creatures of shadow. We move as one." Clara gave me a long, unimpressed look. "You sound insane." "I am," I said, glancing around as if evaluating the mortal world for its inadequacies. "But tonight, so are you." Our first stop was Mrs. Hargrove's house. She had one of those towering front lawns that could double as a small forest. Last year, she had decorated it like a haunted manor. This year, it had escalated to full-on fog machines, a skeleton orchestra, and 2 fog-breathing dragons made of papier mâche. We approached cautiously as one might approach a ritual site. The other neighborhood kids had already begun darting from decoration to decoration, shrieking in delight or terror. I held Clara's hand tightly. "Observe the lesser beings," I whispered, voice dripping with mock superiority. "They do not yet comprehend the magnitude of our Halloween elegance." Clara snorted. "You're ridiculous." Inside the fog, I performed the small, deliberate walk last year's audience had applauded me for. Feet perfectly in line, fingers snapping just slightly, eyes staring forward as if I could see the hidden horrors lurking behind every bush. A little boy dressed as a ghost screamed, ran in circles, and then joined our parade just to stay near us. By the time we reached the front door, I had collected more candy than was necessary for a human child, but less than a reasonable immortal entity might demand. I turned to see Clara giving me a look that said, "Please, don't die on me tonight." We moved on to the Jenkins house next, the one with the enormous black cat statue that blinked eerily in the pumpkin light. I had warned Clara, never underestimate the power of the Jenkins cat. It sees into your soul, and it judges mercilessly. Clara rolled her eyes but kept close. As we approached, the statue's eyes glowed. I froze. The other kids squealed, pointing. "It's alive," one shouted. I raised an eyebrow. "It's alive," I said gravely, "and it despises mediocrity." Clara muttered something under her breath about having grown up with me and still somehow surviving. The cat's glowing eyes followed us as we tiptoed past. Inside, Mr. Jenkins' decorations had gone into full spectacle mode. Fog rolled across the porch, fake bats swooped overhead, and creepy skeletons performed a synchronized wave. I made Clara hold my hand. It was more for show than necessity. We collected candy from the fog and shadows, my deadpan commentary aiding confused looks and amused chuckles from parents. Observe, I said in my best Wednesday monotone. The foolish mortals, distracted by sugar, unaware of the looming existential dread. Clara elbowed me gently. Somehow you make existential dread sound fun. I narrowed my eyes at her. That is the art of Halloween. As we moved from house to house, our group of friends, mostly kids who either followed us out of admiration or mild terror, joined in. I found myself leading a procession through the streets, braids bouncing as I demonstrated the Wednesday march I had perfected last year. Some of the younger kids tried to imitate it, resulting in a chaotic but adorable mix of stiff arms, dramatic pauses, and accidental collisions. At one point, a small army of trick-and-treaters, superheroes, princesses, and a lone banana stopped abruptly at a neighbor's yard. "Don't go in there," Clara whispered. "It's haunted." I tilted my head. Haunted? Possibly, but consider this. Fear is the spice of life. Naturally, we all crept forward. Inside the yard, a fog machine hissed ominously, and a life-size skeleton dropped from a tree. The banana screamed. Someone tripped over a garden gnome, and the tiny witch clutched my arm for protection. I stared down at them with my best Wednesday glare. Survival is optional. Bravery is mandatory. Clara tried not to laugh but failed. I smirked inwardly. Perfect execution. The night wore on with increasingly ridiculous encounters. A raccoon stealing candy from an unsuspecting ghost. A dog dressed as a vampire that barked at my boots with obvious disdain. And a neighbor in a clown suit attempting to jump out from behind a bush, only to be startled by his own reflection in the window. I provided continuous commentary. Observe, chaos, predictable, yet thrilling. Clara whispered, "You're too much sometimes." I tilted my head, considering her critic. No, I'm Halloween. Finally, we reached the cul-de-sac where the annual neighborhood dance festival was set up. Mr. Jenkins had left the decorations mostly intact, but this year's music was subdued, giving me the perfect opportunity to impose a more refined tone. I declared that all dancing must adhere to strict Wednesday standards, arms angled precisely, eyes never leaving the audience, and smiles strictly prohibited. The children stared at me, confused, but the older ones, who had learned of last year's antics, attempted to follow along. I led a parade of stiff-legged, dramatically posed kids across the yard, fog crawling around our boots. Some tripped, some cried, some simply stared in awe at the grandeur of my performance. I remained unflinching. Discipline is key, I reminded them, snapping my fingers. Clara tried to imitate me, but laughed halfway through a pose, nearly toppling a pumpkin. I allowed it. A minor deviation is acceptable. The night concluded with an improvised Wednesday finale, in which I orchestrated a slow, eerie march across the dance floor as the kids followed in hesitant, awkward imitation. Parents clapped nervously, some thinking it was a choreographed event, others unsure if we were performing a ritual to summon actual spirits. I considered both interpretations valid. As the music wound down, the fog dissipated, and the children collected their last bits of candy. I surveyed the scene with the satisfaction of a perfectly executed plan. Clara nudged me. Not bad for a night of whatever this was. I allowed myself a small smile. Not bad indeed. Halloween has been adequately unsettling. We walked home in the crisp night air, our boots crunching on the leaves. The glow of pumpkins faded behind us. Clara yawned. Think we'll survive next year? I paused thoughtfully. Possibly, but Halloween is eternal and so is my performance. By the time I slipped into bed, I felt the exhaustion of a long, chaotic night. Candy wrappers littered my room. My best friend snored softly nearby. And I, in my black dress and slightly crooked braids, drifted off with the satisfaction of a perfect, darkly comedic Halloween accomplished. The night had been mine, the chaos had been ours, and the legend of the girl who became Wednesday Addams, even if only for one evening, would live on in our neighborhood, at least until next Halloween.